I stared at my phone in disbelief, my birthday cake sitting untouched on the kitchen table. One candle, just one, because who needs 68 of them, flickered as my trembling fingers scrolled through my daughter Sarah's Instagram feed. There they were, my son Michael, his wife Debbie, Sarah, her husband Tom, and my 4 grandchildren, all smiling in Mickey Mouse ears at the entrance to Disney World. The timestamp showed they had posted it just 3 hours ago, while I sat here alone, waiting for a birthday call that never came. Surprise trip to Disney, dreams do come true, and blessed family vacation, Magic Kingdom, family vacation, without the matriarch of the family. On my birthday, I set the phone down and closed my eyes, feeling the familiar ache in my chest, not heartbreak. I'd felt enough of that when Richard died 15 years ago. This was something different. Betrayal has its own particular pain, sharper and more precise. The cake I'd bought myself, a small vanilla one from the bakery down the street, seemed to mock me now. I blew out the single candle without making a wish. What was the point? My phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor, Ellen. "Happy birthday, Martha. Did your kids do something special for you today?" I almost laughed. Oh, they did something special, all right. I started typing a polite lie when another notification popped up. An email from Cleveland Credit Union. "Your loan application has been approved." Loan application? I hadn't applied for any loan. With growing dread, I opened the email. There it was, a personal loan for $15,000 approved in my name. The funds had already been dispersed to my joint account with Michael, which I'd kept open for emergencies. My hands began to shake. They wouldn't. They couldn't. I logged into my banking app and checked the transaction history. The money had been withdrawn yesterday, all $15,000, with a memo line that read, "Disney Vacation." The room spun around me as the truth crashed down. My own children had not only excluded me from a family vacation on my birthday, but had committed fraud to finance it, using my perfect credit score and my name. I stumbled to the living room window, needing air. Outside, spring had painted the neighborhood in cheerful colors that now seemed to taunt me. Across the street, Mrs. Jenkins was being visited by her adult children, their cars lining her driveway. Everyone had somewhere to be today except me. The weight of decades of sacrifice pressed down on me. Working 2 jobs after Richard died, putting Michael through law school and Sarah through her master's program, babysitting the grandchildren whenever asked, even when I was exhausted. Always being the emergency contact, the backup plan, the safety net, but never the priority. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The Martha Reynolds who had always put everyone else first, who had swallowed her disappointment and made excuses for her children's neglect. She disappeared. In her place stood someone new, someone with steel in her spine. They didn't know that while I'd been playing the role of the sweet, financially dependent widow, I'd been building something of my own. For 15 years, I'd worked as a financial consultant for local businesses, turning my accounting degree and natural financial acumen into a thriving practice. My modest lifestyle wasn't out of necessity. It was by choice. My portfolio was worth over $2 million, carefully invested and growing. And there was something else they didn't know. Something I'd discovered just last week, something I'd planned to share with them today over birthday cake. I picked up my phone and opened the folder where I'd saved my medical records. The biopsy results were clear. Stage 1 breast cancer, treatable, but I'd need surgery and possibly chemotherapy. I'd need support, family, the very things my children had proven I couldn't count on them for. I sat down at my kitchen table, the cake now forgotten. With steady hands, I opened my laptop and began to type. First, an email to my attorney, Theodore. Then, to my financial advisor, Melissa. Finally, to Ellen, asking if she could water my plants for the next few weeks. Because Martha Reynolds wasn't going to be home when her family returned from their magical vacation. No, I had plans of my own now. And by the time they realized what they'd done, their Disney dream would become a harsh wake-up call. I closed my laptop and smiled for the first time that day. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered to the empty house. "Make a wish." And this time, I did. The morning after my birthday, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The betrayal had crystallized something within me, not hatred, but resolve. My first call was to Cleveland Credit Union, where I'd been a member for over 40 years. "Mrs. Reynolds, I see the loan here," said Margaret, the branch manager who knew me personally. "Your son Michael came in with all the paperwork. Since you've co-signed for him before and your credit is excellent, it was processed quickly. I never signed anything, Margaret, I said calmly, and I never authorized this loan. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Martha, are you saying this is fraud? That's exactly what I'm saying. After an hour of discussions, verification questions, and promises of investigation, the loan was flagged for fraud review. Margaret assured me they would freeze further withdrawals, but the money already spent would be complicated to recover. Will you be pressing charges? She asked gently. The question hung in the air. Would I? Could I send my own children to jail? The answer surprised even me. Not yet. I have a different approach in mind. Next, I called Dr. Brennan's office to discuss my treatment options. The lumpectomy would be scheduled for next month, followed by radiation. We caught it very early, Martha, she reassured me. The prognosis is excellent. I'd like to keep this private for now, I told her. My family doesn't know yet. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my planner, not the one my children knew about, where I dutifully noted grandchildren's soccer games and dentist appointments, but my business planner, filled with client meetings and investment reviews. For 15 years, I'd built my consulting business, while my family thought I was just volunteering at the community center. My clients were small business owners across Cleveland who trusted me with their financial futures. I'd helped dozens of women like me, widows, divorcees, empty nesters, secure their independence through smart investing, all while my own children thought I lived on Richard's modest pension and Social Security. I drafted an email to my clients, explaining I'd be taking a short sabbatical for personal reasons. Then I called Theodore, my attorney, who'd been Richard's college roommate and my trusted friend for over 40 years. They did what? Theodore's voice rose in indignation when I explained the situation. I need your help, Theo. Not to punish them, but to protect myself. You've got it. Come to my office tomorrow and we'll get everything in order. As I packed an overnight bag, my phone buzzed with notifications. More Disney photos. Sarah and Michael's families, grinning in front of Cinderella's castle. My youngest grandchild, Emma, wearing princess ears. The caption read, "Best family vacation ever. Most blessed family." The word tasted bitter now. Before you continue reading my story, I want to encourage you to subscribe to this channel. Every week, I share stories of women like me who found their strength when it mattered most. And if you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to join our exclusive group. Just check the pinned comment below for access to ad-free stories you can listen to anytime, even offline. By the time my family returned from their magical vacation, they'd find their financial castle had turned to sand. Not because I wanted revenge, but because it was time they understood. Respect isn't optional. It's fundamental. I drove to the airport with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. My ticket to Sedona, Arizona was one way. My old college roommate, Vivian, had a guest house and had been begging me to visit for years. It would be the perfect place to heal, both from surgery and from betrayal. As the plane took off, I looked down at Cleveland growing smaller beneath me. For decades, I'd made myself small to fit into the corners of my children's lives. No more. I pulled out my phone one last time before airplane mode and composed a single text to the family group chat. I know about the loan and Disney. Enjoy your vacation. We'll talk when you return. Then I turned off my phone, closed my eyes, and smiled. The storm brewing behind me would be all the more powerful for its silence, and I would return to face it not as the mother they'd taken for granted, but as the woman they never truly knew. Martha Reynolds was finally putting herself first, and heaven help anyone who stood in her way. The Sedona sunset painted the red rocks in shades of fire as I sat on Vivian's patio, sipping herbal tea. My phone, which I'd finally turned back on, buzzed incessantly with missed calls and frantic texts from Michael and Sarah. "Mom, please call us. It's not what you think. Where are you? We're worried sick." Worried. Now they were worried, not when they forged my signature or stole my identity, not when they left me alone on my birthday. Only when they realized there might be consequences. Vivian brought out another cup of tea and sat beside me. Unlike me, she'd never married or had children. Her life had been a series of adventures: Peace Corps in Thailand, teaching in Japan, running an art gallery in Santa Fe. We'd kept in touch through it all. Her Christmas cards full of exotic stamps, mine full of school photos and family updates. "Your kids still blowing up your phone?" she asked, her silver hair catching the last rays of sunlight. Like fireworks on the 4th of July, I replied, showing her the screen. 37 missed calls, 63 text messages, 4 voicemails. Are you going to tell them about the cancer? I set my phone down. Not yet. That's my card to play when I'm ready. Martha Reynolds, Vivian laughed. When did you become so strategic? When I realized I raised 2 children who think nothing of committing fraud against their own mother. That night, I finally listened to one voicemail from my 12-year-old granddaughter, Lily. Grandma, everyone's really upset. Dad and Mom are fighting about the money thing. Are you okay? Please call me back. Lily. My sweet, observant Lily. The only one who'd sent me a birthday text, even from Disney. My heart ached for her, caught in the crossfire of her parents' poor decisions. I texted her back. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just taking some time for myself. This is between your parents and me. Don't worry. The next morning, I met with a local oncologist Dr. Vivian had recommended. She reviewed my records from Cleveland and nodded approvingly. Dr. Brennan's assessment is right on. Stage 1, highly treatable. We can coordinate your care between here and Cleveland. I'd like to have the surgery here, I said firmly. I'm staying with my friend for at least a month. She looked at me over her glasses. Family issues? You could say that. Well, we can schedule the lumpectomy for next week. The recovery isn't too difficult, but you'll need someone to help you for a few days after. Vivian will be there, I said, with more confidence than I felt. I hadn't actually asked her yet. Back at the house, I finally called Theodore. How bad is it? I asked. They're panicking, he said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. The credit union has frozen the remaining funds and launched a fraud investigation. Michael came to my office yesterday practically begging for my help. What did you tell him? That I represent you, not him, and that identity theft is a federal crime. I closed my eyes, imagining Michael's face. My son, the attorney, suddenly on the wrong side of the law. Did he explain why they did it? He said it was Sarah's idea. They wanted to give the kids a dream vacation, but couldn't afford it. They claimed they were going to pay you back before you even noticed. And my birthday? The fact that they all disappeared without a word? Theodore's sigh carried through the phone. He said they were planning to FaceTime you from Disney as a surprise, but by the time they got there, they discovered you'd already found out about the loan. A surprise, as if excluding me was some kind of gift. What do you want to do next, Martha? Theodore asked. The bank is waiting on your decision about pressing charges. What did I want? Punishment? Revenge? No. I wanted recognition, respect, and maybe, if it wasn't too late, a family that saw me as a person, not just a resource. Tell them I'm considering my options, I said finally. And Theodore? Transfer all my accounts to new numbers. Remove Michael from any joint accounts, and prepare paperwork to update my will. All of it? All of it. I'm going to pause here for a moment and ask, where are you watching from today, and how old are you? If you're enjoying my story so far, please hit that like button. I'd love to know I'm not alone in my experience. After ending the call with Theodore, I walked out to Vivian's garden, where desert flowers somehow thrived in the harsh conditions. Like me, I thought, ready to bloom exactly when everyone least expected it. I composed a simple email to my children. I'm safe. I'm taking time for myself. The fraud investigation is ongoing, but whether charges are filed depends entirely on what happens next. I'll be in touch when I'm ready. Mom. Then I turned off my phone again and helped Vivian prepare dinner, telling her about my upcoming surgery as the Arizona stars began to appear above us. Tomorrow would bring enough worry. Tonight, for the first time in decades, I was exactly where I wanted to be. The day of my surgery arrived with a clarity that only comes from facing your mortality. Vivian drove me to the Sedona Medical Center at dawn, the red rocks glowing like embers in the morning light. You sure you don't want to tell your kids? She asked, gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. I mean, it's surgery, Martha. I gazed out the window. They'll know soon enough, just not today. The truth was, I wasn't being cruel. I was being cautious. I needed to face this operation with absolute calm, not managing my children's guilt and panic alongside my own fear. The lumpectomy went smoothly, according to Dr. Chang. I woke up groggy but relieved in the recovery room, Vivian faithfully by my side with a smuggled-in cup of decent coffee. Good news, she said, squeezing my hand. Clean margins. They got it all. Tears welled up unexpectedly. In all the family drama, I'd pushed aside the reality that I had cancer. Actually, had cancer. Past tense now, hopefully. Your phone's been blowing up, Vivian added, nodding toward my purse. Theodore called my landline when he couldn't reach you. Apparently your kids showed up at your house in Cleveland. When they couldn't find you, Michael called the police. I laughed, then winced at the pain in my chest. The police? I'm a grown woman taking a vacation. The officer called Theodore, who assured them you were fine, but refused to disclose your location. Now they're really freaking out. Good, I said, then immediately felt a pang of guilt. I don't mean that. I just need them to understand what it feels like to be discarded. After being discharged, we returned to Vivian's house where I rested on the patio, wrapped in a blanket despite the Arizona heat. Finally, I turned my phone back on. The notification count had reached triple digits. I opened my email first. Among the panicked messages from my children was one from Cleveland Credit Union. The fraud investigation was complete. They needed my decision on whether to press charges within 72 hours. Then I saw it. An email from Dr. Brennan in Cleveland. My biopsy results had been sent to Michael's email by mistake. A privacy breach they deeply regretted. My blood ran cold. They knew about the cancer. I checked my voicemails next. Michael's latest was different from the others. Mom, we know about the diagnosis. Please call us. We're so sorry. For everything. Please. His voice broke at the end. In the background, I could hear Sarah crying. I closed my eyes, emotions swirling. This wasn't how I wanted them to find out. Not from a misdirected email. Not while I was still in post-op recovery. I'd wanted to control this narrative, to reveal my illness on my own terms. But life rarely follows our carefully constructed scripts. I called Theodore first. They know about the cancer, I said without preamble. I heard, he replied. Michael called me in tears. Sarah too. They're devastated, Martha. About the cancer, about what they did to you. They're at your house now, waiting for you to come home. I'm not coming home yet. I just had surgery. The silence on the other end was heavy. Surgery? Today? Martha, why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to do this my way, Theo. On my terms. After we hung up, I stared at the call log from my children. 27 calls from Michael today alone. 32 from Sarah. Even my grandchildren had called. Vivian brought me a cup of tea. You going to call them back? I shook my head. Not yet. Let me show you something first. I pulled up the Disney photos they'd posted. The smiling faces, the expensive meals, the dream vacation they'd stolen my identity to finance. Look at these timestamps, I said, pointing to the screen. This one was posted right after they got the diagnosis email. And this one. And this one. Vivian squinted. They kept posting happy photos after they found out you have cancer? Exactly. They didn't cut their trip short. They didn't race home to find me. They finished their vacation first. I set the phone down. Now they're sorry. Now they're devastated. But only after they had their fun. As the sun set over the red rocks, I composed a text to both my children. I know, Doctor. Brennan contacted you. I'm safe and recovering from surgery. I need time. Do not come to find me. Instead, think about why I felt I couldn't tell you about my diagnosis in the first place. Think about why I had to face surgery alone rather than with my family. I'll contact you when I'm ready. I sent it, then turned to Vivian. Tomorrow I want to visit that lawyer friend of yours. It's time to make some changes to my will and financial arrangements. Martha, Vivian said carefully, are you sure about this? They're still your children. I touched the bandage on my chest, feeling the dull ache beneath. Yes, they are. And it's time they learned that sometimes love means accountability. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I wondered if perhaps the cancer was a metaphor, a small malignant growth that, if left untreated, could destroy everything, just like the disrespect I'd allowed to grow in my family year after year. Both required painful intervention to heal, and heal we would, one way or another. 3 days after my surgery, I sat across from Vivian's friend, Gloria Ramirez, a sharp-eyed estate attorney with a reputation for protecting older women from financial abuse. Identity theft by family members is more common than people realize, Gloria said, reviewing the loan documents Theodore had forwarded, especially against older parents. But using it to fund a Disney vacation? She shook her head. That's a new low. They're good people who made a terrible choice, I said, surprising myself by defending them. Gloria gave me a knowing look. That's what all my clients say. Doesn't make it right. By the end of our meeting, I had a revised will, a new power of attorney removing Michael, and a comprehensive financial plan that would protect me going forward. But the most important document was a letter, my terms for reconciliation. This isn't punitive, I explained to Gloria. It's protective for all of us. They're lucky to have you, she said as I left. Most people in your position would press charges without a second thought. Back at Vivian's, I found her entertaining an unexpected visitor, my 12-year-old granddaughter, Lily. My heart nearly stopped when I saw her sitting in the living room. "Grandma!" She jumped up, then stopped short, eyeing my careful movements. "Are you okay? Dad doesn't know I'm here." "Lily," I breathed. "How on earth?" "I used my babysitting money," she said proudly. "And I knew Aunt Vivian's address from the Christmas cards. Dad and Mom are freaking out about everything, and nobody would tell me what's going on. So I came to see for myself." I looked at Vivian, who shrugged. She showed up in an Uber. What was I supposed to do, send her back? I sat beside Lily, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at my stitches. Her sharp eyes caught my discomfort. "You really did have surgery?" she whispered. "Mom said maybe you were making it up to make them feel bad." The casual cruelty of that assumption took my breath away. "No, sweetheart, I'm not making anything up. Is it true they stole money from you for our Disney trip? Children have a way of cutting to the heart of things." "Yes." Lily's face crumpled. "I hated that trip. Mom and Dad fought the whole time after they got that email. They thought we couldn't hear them, but the hotel walls were thin." I held her hand, this brave, perceptive child who'd crossed the country alone to find the truth. "The last day Dad was crying in the bathroom," Lily continued. "I've never seen him cry before, and when we got home and you weren't there," she trailed off. "Grandma, are you going to die?" "No," I said firmly. "The doctors caught it early. That's why I had surgery." "Then why didn't you tell anyone? Why did you disappear? How do you explain complex adult feelings to a child? How do you describe the particular pain of being erased by the very people you gave life to?" "Sometimes, Lily, when people hurt you badly, you need space to heal. Just like with my surgery. I needed to be somewhere quiet, where I could think clearly." She nodded solemnly. "Like when I hide in the treehouse when Jack is being mean." Exactly like that. That night, after calling Michael to let him know Lily was safe with me, through a conversation so tense it could have snapped in half, I sat on the patio watching the stars with my granddaughter. "Dad wants to know when you're coming home," Lily said, wrapped in a blanket against the desert night chill. "Soon," I promised, "but things will be different." "Different how?" I looked at this child, so much wiser than her parents in many ways. "I won't be taken for granted anymore, and I won't let anyone use me." Lily leaned against my good side. Good, because what they did was really mean. Out of the mouths of babes. The next morning, I woke to find Michael had booked a flight to Sedona. He'd be arriving that afternoon to pick up Lily. "He's bringing Mom too," Lily reported, reading the text from her father. "They want to talk to you." Vivian raised her eyebrows. "You ready for this showdown?" "It's not a showdown," I said, though my racing heart suggested otherwise. "It's a reckoning." I spent the morning preparing, not by rehearsing accusations, but by centering myself in truth. By the time their rental car pulled into Vivian's driveway, I was calm, clear, and more certain than ever of what needed to be said. Sarah was first through the door, her face blotchy from crying. Michael followed, looking simultaneously angry and ashamed. They both stopped short when they saw me, taking in my pale complexion and the careful way I held myself to protect my surgical site. "Mom," Sarah whispered, "you really did have surgery." Something in me broke and mended simultaneously. "Yes, Sarah, just like I really did have cancer, just like you really did steal my identity, just like you really did abandon me on my birthday." The truth, finally spoken aloud, filled the room like oxygen. And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that whatever happened next would define us all for years to come. The awakening had begun. Vivian tactfully took Lily outside to see the desert garden, leaving me alone with my children in her sunlit living room. The silence stretched between us like an uncrossable chasm. "You should have told us," Michael finally said, his lawyer's instinct to establish a defense kicking in. "About the cancer." "When?" I asked quietly. "During your Space Mountain ride? Or perhaps while you were meeting Cinderella? I was planning to tell you on my birthday. You know, that day you all disappeared without a word." Sarah's tears started flowing again. "We were going to call you from Disney. It was supposed to be a surprise." "Oh, it was definitely a surprise," I said, my voice steady. Especially the loan application with my forged signature. Tell me, which one of you practiced my handwriting? Michael paled. Sarah looked away. It wasn't like that, Michael insisted. We thought. You thought I wouldn't notice, I finished for him. You thought I was too old, too trusting, or perhaps too stupid to check my credit report or bank statements. We were going to pay it back, Sarah cried. It was just a timing issue. The kids wanted to go during spring break, but we didn't have quite enough saved yet. I let that sink in. So instead of waiting until you could afford it, or heaven forbid, asking me directly for help, you committed fraud. The word hung heavy in the air. Fraud. Not a mistake. Not poor judgment. A crime. Are you pressing charges? Michael asked, the attorney in him assessing the damage. I haven't decided yet. Sarah gasped. You'd send your own children to jail? Over a loan we're going to repay? I looked at my daughter, my beautiful, entitled daughter, who still didn't understand the gravity of what they'd done. This isn't about money, Sarah. It's about respect, consideration, basic human decency. I gestured to my chest. I had cancer. I was scared. I needed my family. Instead, you took my good credit, my good name, and used them for your own pleasure while leaving me alone on my birthday. For the first time, I saw true comprehension dawn in Michael's eyes. Not just guilt over being caught, but genuine understanding of how deeply they had wounded me. Mom, he said quietly, we messed up. Badly. There's no excuse. No, I agreed. There isn't. Sarah wiped her eyes. What happens now? Are you coming home? Not yet. I need to finish my initial recovery here. And then? Michael pressed. I took a deep breath. And then we start over, with conditions. I handed each of them an envelope containing the letter I'd prepared with Gloria. Inside was a detailed agreement outlining my expectations going forward. Regular family therapy sessions, financial transparency, a repayment plan for the fraudulent loan, and most importantly, a clear understanding that my financial resources were mine alone to control. They read in silence, exchanging glances occasionally. This is comprehensive, Michael said finally, the lawyer speaking again. Consider it a contract, I replied, one that comes with non-negotiable terms. Sarah looked up, her face a mixture of shame and defiance. And if we don't agree, then I'll finish my cancer treatment alone, change my phone number, move away, and you can explain to your children why their grandmother disappeared from their lives. You wouldn't, Sarah whispered. 6 weeks ago, I wouldn't have. But 6 weeks ago, I also wouldn't have believed my children would steal my identity and abandon me on my birthday. I leaned forward. I've changed, Sarah. The question is, have you? Before either could answer, Lily burst back into the room, chattering about the hummingbirds in Vivian's garden. The adult tension immediately dissipated as we all worked to shield her from our conflict. That evening, after Michael and Sarah checked into a nearby hotel, my condition, no staying at Vivian's, I sat on the patio watching the sunset paint the red rocks gold. Vivian brought out glasses of iced tea. How'd it go? She asked. About as well as could be expected, I replied. They're shocked that I'm not just rolling over and forgiving everything immediately. Vivian chuckled. You've been enabling them for years. Of course they're shocked when the doormat suddenly stands up. I thought about that metaphor. A doormat standing up. It was apt. For too long, I'd let people wipe their problems on me and walk right over my boundaries. Before I continue this journey of reclaiming my life, I want to remind you to subscribe and share this video with someone who might need to hear this message of empowerment. Your support helps stories like mine reach those who need them most. The next morning, Michael and Sarah returned, subdued and serious. Michael handed me a signed copy of my letter. We agree to everything, he said, and we've already called a family therapist in Cleveland. Sarah nodded, her usual defensive posture gone. We were wrong, Mom. So wrong, and we're going to make it right. I studied their faces, looking for the petulant children who had stood before me yesterday. Instead, I saw glimpses of the adults I'd always hoped they'd become. That's a start, I said, allowing a small smile. A very good start. My first chemotherapy session was scheduled for the week after I returned to Cleveland. Despite their promises, I wasn't sure if Michael or Sarah would actually show up. Years of disappointment had taught me to expect little. I was wrong. When I arrived at Cleveland Oncology Center, both of my children were already waiting in the lobby. Michael had taken the day off from his law firm, something he'd previously claimed was basically impossible when I'd asked him to attend my routine knee surgery 3 years ago. Sarah had arranged childcare for her youngest and brought a tote bag full of what she called chemo comfort items, soft blankets, ginger candies for nausea, and a new tablet loaded with movies. "You didn't have to come," I said, genuinely surprised. "Yes, we did," Michael replied simply. The infusion room was bright and airy, with recliners spaced around the perimeter. A nurse named Denise helped me get settled, expertly inserting the IV while chattering about her grandchildren. "First time?" she asked kindly. I nodded, trying not to show my fear. "You've got good support," she noted, glancing at Michael and Sarah hovering nearby. "That makes all the difference." As the drugs began flowing into my veins, I studied my children's faces. They were trying so hard, too hard perhaps. Sarah kept adjusting my blanket unnecessarily. Michael checked his watch every few minutes despite having claimed to clear his schedule. "You can both relax," I finally said. "This takes hours. I'm not going to break." They exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "We found something," Michael said after a moment, "when we were cleaning your house before you came home." My stomach tightened. "Oh?" Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out a worn, leather-bound book, my business journal, the one where I'd tracked my consulting clients, investments, and growing net worth over the years. "Mom," Sarah said carefully, "you're wealthy." I laughed, then winced as the movement sent a twinge through my port. Comfortable would be a better word. $2 million is more than comfortable, Michael countered. "Why didn't you tell us?" The question hung between us, laden with unspoken implications. Why had I lived so modestly? Why had I let them believe I struggled financially? Why had I continued to work part-time jobs they knew about while hiding my consulting business? "Would it have changed how you treated me?" I asked simply. Their silence was answer enough. "I started small after your father died," I explained, watching the clear liquid drip steadily into my veins. "Local businesses needed help with bookkeeping, tax planning, word spread. I was good at it. But you were always clipping coupons, shopping sales," Sarah protested. "You said you couldn't afford to join us in Cabo 3 years ago." "I chose not to join you in Cabo," I corrected. "And I clip coupons because wasting money is foolish, regardless of how much you have." Michael leaned forward. "But why keep it secret?" I met his gaze steadily. "Because I watched what happened to Aunt Judith when her children discovered her inheritance. Suddenly, everyone needed loans for businesses, down payments, debt consolidation. Within 5 years, she had nothing left. We wouldn't have done that," Sarah insisted, but her eyes flickered away from mine. "Wouldn't you?" I asked gently. "You took out a loan in my name without my knowledge. What would you have done if you'd known I had money sitting in accounts?" The truth settled over us like a heavy blanket. In the quiet that followed, a realization dawned in Michael's eyes. "The Disney trip," he said slowly. "If we'd just asked, would you have helped us pay for it?" I smiled sadly. "I would have paid for all of us to go, together, as a family." Sarah covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The rest of the chemo session passed in reflection. We talked about Richard, about the early years when money was tight, about how fear of poverty had shaped so many of my choices. They shared stories I'd never heard, how they'd been teased in school for my secondhand clothes shopping, how they'd been embarrassed by my coupon binder at the grocery store. "We thought you were struggling," Michael said. "We didn't know it was a choice. Many things you thought you knew about me were wrong," I replied. "That's on both of us." 3 hours later, as Denise removed my IV, I felt the first wave of nausea and fatigue hitting. Michael immediately stood to help me up, his hand gentle under my elbow. "I've got the guest room all set up at our house," he said. "The kids are dying to see you." I shook my head. "Not today. I need to be in my own home, in my own space." Disappointment flashed across his face, but he nodded. "Of course. Whatever you need." As we walked slowly to the parking lot, I noticed Sarah texting rapidly. "Everything okay?" I asked. She looked up, an unreadable expression on her face. "Yeah, just, you'll see." When we pulled into my driveway 30 minutes later, I understood. Cars lined the street. Lily and her cousins had made welcome home signs that fluttered from my porch railings. My front garden, neglected during my absence, had been freshly weeded and mulched. "The kids did it all," Sarah said quietly. "It was their idea." As my grandchildren rushed out to greet me, carefully, as they'd clearly been warned about my condition, I felt something shift and settle inside me. Not forgiveness exactly. That would take more time, but a recognition that healing was possible, that we might forge something new from the broken pieces of what came before. If you've been touched by this story of family healing, please subscribe and share it with others who might need to hear it. Sometimes, the most powerful transformations begin with the most painful circumstances. That night, as I drifted off to sleep in my own bed, I realized that cancer had given me an unexpected gift, the clarity to see what needed to change and the courage to demand it. The treatment had begun, not just for my body, but for my family's soul. 6 weeks into chemotherapy, my body was at war with itself. The medications saving my life were simultaneously draining it from me, my hair thinning, nausea a constant companion, fatigue settling into my bones like an unwelcome tenant. Yet strangely, as my physical strength diminished, my inner resolve grew stronger. My relationship with my children was undergoing its own kind of chemotherapy, painful but necessary treatment for years of toxic patterns. On this particular Wednesday, Michael arrived to drive me to treatment instead of Sarah, who usually took the Wednesday shift in their carefully coordinated schedule. "Sarah's got the flu," he explained as he helped me into his BMW. "The kids too. She's devastated about not being here." A month ago, I would have doubted this excuse. Today, I found I believed him. "She texted me at 5 a.m., I said. "Told me to check the freezer." Michael smiled. "She made about 15 meals for you last weekend. Color-coded containers with reheating instructions." The drive to the oncology center was quiet until Michael cleared his throat, that telltale sign he was about to discuss something uncomfortable. "The family therapy sessions are helping," he said, eyes fixed on the road. "Dr. Winters says we've made progress identifying our patterns." "Patterns," I repeated, such a gentle word for years of neglect and entitlement. "Dad's death affected us all differently," Michael continued. "You became more self-sufficient, more private. I became more controlling. Sarah became more grasping." I looked at my son, really looked at him. His normally immaculate appearance showed subtle signs of strain, a missed spot while shaving, slightly rumpled shirt, dark circles under his eyes. He was doing the work, facing uncomfortable truths. "Your father would be disappointed in how I raised you," I said suddenly. Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What? No. I enabled your worst instincts," I continued. "When Richard died, I was so afraid of losing you too that I never set proper boundaries. I gave and gave until giving became expected rather than appreciated." We pulled into the hospital parking lot, but Michael made no move to exit the car. "Dad would be disappointed in us, not you," he said quietly. "He valued integrity above everything. What we did, what I did, was unforgivable." "Not unforgivable," I corrected, "just unacceptable." In the treatment room, as the drugs flowed into my port, Michael pulled out his laptop. "I have something to show you," he said, opening a spreadsheet. "I've been working on this for weeks." It was a detailed financial plan, not for him, but for me. A comprehensive analysis of my investments, retirement accounts, and estate planning, with recommendations for maximizing growth and security. "You've done your homework," I said, impressed despite myself. "I consulted with 3 different financial advisors specializing in women over 65, he replied. "None of them know you, of course. I just wanted expert opinions." I scrolled through the meticulous document. "Why?" "Because I want you to know that I see you, really see you, not as a wallet or a babysitter or a burden, but as a smart, capable woman who deserves the best financial advice possible." He hesitated. "And because I want you to know that I'm not after your money." The words hung between us, honest, painful, necessary. "Thank you," I said simply. After treatment, exhausted and queasy, I asked Michael to drive me to the lake. We sat in silence watching the waves lap against the shore, the Cleveland skyline hazy in the distance. "I used to bring you and Sarah here after your father's chemo sessions," I said. "Do you remember?" Michael nodded. "You'd buy us ice cream and Dad would tell terrible jokes, even though he felt awful. He wanted those days to feel normal for you, to not be just about cancer. And now, here we are again." I turned to look at my son, this complicated man who'd broken my trust, yet was working so hard to rebuild it. "Michael, there's something I haven't told any of you." I took a deep breath. "My prognosis is excellent, but having cancer forces you to think about mortality. I've made decisions about my future." His body tensed, preparing for bad news. I'm selling the house. What? But you love that house. I loved raising my family there, I corrected. But it's too big for me now. Too full of ghosts. After treatment, I'm moving to a condo downtown. I've already put a deposit down. Michael stared at me as if seeing a stranger. Perhaps he was. The old Martha would never have made such a decision without consulting her children first. And there's more, I continued. I'm expanding my consulting business. Several of my clients want me to manage their portfolios full-time once I'm better. Mom, that's... Wow. He shook his head in wonder. You're really doing this. I really am. Before we head into the next part of my journey, I want to remind you to subscribe to this channel and share it with friends who might need to hear this message. Your support means everything and helps stories like mine reach those who need them most. On the drive home, Michael was unusually quiet. As he helped me inside, he finally spoke. I'm proud of you, Mom. Terrified for you, worried about you, but so damn proud. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt tears form. Not tears of anger or betrayal or fear, but of recognition. My son, my difficult, complicated son, was seeing me clearly at last. That night, as I sipped ginger tea to settle my post-chemo stomach, I realized something profound. This cancer, this betrayal, this painful reconciliation, they had awakened me from a decades-long slumber. I had been sleepwalking through life, playing a role created for me rather than writing my own story. No more. Autumn painted Cleveland in fiery hues as I entered the final weeks of my treatment. My body was tired, but my spirit felt clearer than it had in decades. My new condo downtown, a modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, was nearly ready for move-in. My old house, the repository of 40 years of memories, was under contract with a young family expecting their first child. Life was transforming, cell by cell, day by day. On this crisp Saturday morning, Sarah had arrived early to drive me to what I thought was a regular checkup, but something in her nervous energy made me suspicious. What are you not telling me? I asked as we drove past the hospital turnoff. Sarah bit her lip. Don't be mad. That's never a promising start to a sentence. The family wants to see you. All together. She glanced at me. It's nothing stressful, I promise. Just lunch. I sighed. Sarah, you know how I feel about surprises these days. It's not like before, she insisted. We discussed it in therapy last week. Dr. Winters thought it was a good idea, and we made sure it was something you'd be comfortable with. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to Lakeside Park, where a group had gathered at the picnic tables overlooking the water. Michael and his family were there, along with Sarah's husband and their children. Even Theodore had come, standing slightly apart with a wrapped package under his arm. My heart thumped painfully against my ribs. What is this? Sarah turned off the engine. It's your birthday, Mom. Your real one, this time. I'd been so focused on treatment, on rebuilding boundaries, on creating my new life, that I'd completely forgotten my half-birthday. An old family tradition Richard had started decades ago when the children were small and couldn't wait 6 months between celebrations. October 20th, I whispered. Your father always insisted on celebrating both dates. We remember, Sarah said softly. We just forgot what it meant. As I approached the gathering, my grandchildren spotted me first. They had clearly been coached not to rush at me, instead walking quickly with homemade cards clutched in their hands. Grandma, Lily called. We made you a special lunch. Nothing that would make you sick from the chemo. Emma, Michael's 6-year-old, added earnestly, and we didn't spend any of your money. The adults winced collectively, but I found myself laughing. A real, deep laugh that felt like breaking through ice. The picnic was simple but thoughtful. Mild foods that wouldn't trigger my nausea. Cushions for the hard bench. A canopy for shade. Every detail considered with care. As we ate, I noticed something remarkable. My children weren't performing concern or affection. They were present, attentive without hovering, respectful without formality. The therapy was working, not just as a condition of my forgiveness, but as a genuine path to healing. After lunch, Michael stood nervously. Mom, we have something for you. It's not much, but... Sarah joined him, holding a plain blue folder. It's from all of us. Every single family member contributed. Inside was a deed. My name listed as sole owner of a small commercial property downtown, just 3 blocks from my new condo. It's for your business, Michael explained. A proper office for Reynolds Financial Consulting. We pooled our savings. And sold some things, Sarah added. Michael sold his boat. Tom sold his vintage car collection. I stared at the document in shock. How did you know I was thinking of expanding? Lily told us, Sarah admitted. After she ran away to Arizona, she said you talked about your clients, about building something bigger. We should have known, Michael said quietly. We should have seen who you really were all along. I looked at the property details. A small storefront with 2 offices, freshly renovated according to the photos. Perfect for meeting clients, for growing something that was truly mine. This doesn't erase what happened, I said carefully. We know, they answered in unison. But it's a start, Michael added. A real one. Later, as the grandchildren played by the lake under Theodore's watchful eye, I sat with my children at a table slightly removed from the others. The time had come for the conversation I'd been rehearsing for weeks. I'm not pressing charges about the loan, I said. Their relief was palpable, but I held up a hand. Not because what you did wasn't serious, but because I believe you've understood the gravity of your actions. We have, Sarah whispered. The loan is being repaid according to the schedule we agreed upon, I continued, and I appreciate the office space more than I can say. But the most valuable thing you've given me these past months is recognition, seeing me as I am, not as you needed me to be. Michael nodded, eyes suspiciously bright. We took you for granted for so long. It shouldn't have taken cancer and everything else for us to wake up. Sometimes we need dramatic lessons, I said. Lord knows I've needed a few myself. Sarah reached for my hand. Are we going to be okay, Mom? As a family? I looked out at my grandchildren skipping stones across the lake, at Theodore chatting with Sarah's husband, at this imperfect, complicated family of mine. We're already okay, I said. Different, but okay. Better even. As the afternoon light turned golden, my youngest grandchild, 4-year-old Jack, climbed into my lap with a dandelion clutched in his fist. I picked this for your cancer, Grandma, he announced solemnly, to make it go away. I accepted the slightly crushed weed with all the reverence of receiving the Hope Diamond. Thank you, sweetheart. I think it's working already. And in that moment, with the weight of my grandson on my knees and the sight of my family gathered not out of obligation but choice, I realized it was true. The healing had begun, not just for my body, but for all of us. We were finding our way back to each other, this time with clearer vision and firmer boundaries. Not perfect, but real. Not what I had expected, but perhaps exactly what I needed. The cancer had been a thief, stealing my energy, my certainty, my hair, but it had given something precious in return, the courage to stand in my truth and demand to be seen. 1 year to the day after my disastrous birthday, the one spent alone while my family rode roller coasters in Disney World, I stood in front of the mirror in my downtown condo, hardly recognizing the woman who looked back at me. My hair had returned, not in the salt and pepper waves I'd had before chemotherapy, but in a striking silver pixie cut that framed my face in a way that felt both sophisticated and defiant. My body, though still bearing the scars of surgery, had regained its strength through gentle yoga classes I'd begun taking with Vivian, who now split her time between Sedona and Cleveland, staying in my guest room for weeks at a time. But the most profound change wasn't physical. It was in my eyes, clear, direct, unapologetic. Ready for your big day? Vivian asked, appearing in the doorway with a cup of herbal tea. As I'll ever be, I replied, smoothing down the lapel of my new blazer, a deep teal that the personal shopper had insisted brought out my eyes. Today marked the official grand opening of Reynolds Financial Empowerment Center, an evolution of my consulting business into something far more meaningful. The small storefront my children had purchased had been transformed into a warm, welcoming space where women, particularly those over 50, could come for financial education, planning services, and support. Michael called, Vivian said, checking her watch. They're all in place for the ribbon cutting. Apparently, there's quite a crowd gathering. I smiled, thinking of how dramatically things had shifted in a year's time. Michael, once dismissive of my financial acumen, now regularly consulted me on his more complex cases. Sarah, who had once seen me primarily as free childcare, had recently enrolled in accounting classes, inspired by what she called my secret financial genius. Did I ever tell you about my conversation with Lily? I asked Vivian as we gathered our things. The day after my last treatment? Vivian shook her head. She asked me if I forgave her parents for what they did. if things could ever really be fixed between us. I paused, remembering the earnestness in my granddaughter's eyes. I told her that sometimes broken things, when mended carefully, become stronger at the fractured places. Different, but stronger. And do you believe that? Vivian asked, her gaze sharp and assessing. I do, I said after a moment. Not because forgiveness is magic, but because it's a choice we keep making, day after day. They're choosing to see me differently. I'm choosing to give them the chance to show me who they can be. The center was only a short walk from my condo, one of the many benefits of my new urban lifestyle. As we approached, I could see the gathering crowd. Local business owners I'd advised over the years, women from my cancer support group, my family standing together near the door, the grandchildren fidgeting in their dress clothes. And a surprise, several of my former clients, now elderly widows themselves, who had traveled from as far as Pittsburgh to support this new chapter. Michael spotted me first, waving and nudging Sarah. They both moved toward me, flanking me as I approached the storefront with its new sign gleaming in the morning sunlight. You ready, Mom? Sarah asked, squeezing my hand. Speech all prepared? Michael added. I nodded, though in truth I'd rewritten my remarks a dozen times, unsatisfied with anything that felt too rehearsed for this deeply personal moment. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. The mayor, whose mother I'd helped secure retirement funds after a difficult divorce, said a few words about community support for women in their second and third acts. Theodore read a proclamation from the city council recognizing the center's contribution to financial literacy. Then it was my turn. Standing before the microphone, looking out at the faces of those who'd been part of my journey, both the painful parts and the healing, I set aside my prepared notes. A year ago today, I began. I sat alone in my kitchen on my birthday, discovering that my family had taken a vacation without me, using funds from a loan they'd secured in my name without my knowledge. A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. My children stood straighter, accepting the public acknowledgement of their actions without protest. A week later, I sat in a doctor's office, learning I had breast cancer. I paused, letting the gravity of that moment sink in. What followed was the hardest year of my life. Harder even than when I lost my beloved Richard. Because this time, I wasn't just fighting disease. I was fighting to be seen, to be valued, to be respected. I looked directly at Michael and Sarah, their eyes glistening with tears. What I discovered through this journey was that sometimes the greatest gift we can give those we love is the opportunity to do better, to make amends, to grow. Before we end this story together, I want to sincerely thank you for listening. If my experience has touched you in any way, please subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to stand in your truth. Your support helps stories like mine reach those who need them most. This center isn't just about financial planning, I continued. It's about empowerment, about recognizing that we all have value that extends far beyond what we can give to others. It's about seeing ourselves clearly and demanding that others do the same. I motioned to my family to join me for the ribbon cutting. As we stood together, the large ceremonial scissors in our collective grip, I added one final thought. A wise woman recently told me that broken things, when mended carefully, become stronger at the fractured places. Today, we celebrate not just a new business, but a mended family. Different than before, but stronger for having faced our fractures honestly. We cut the ribbon together, the snip of the scissors giving way to applause. As we turned to enter the center for the reception, Lily appeared at my side, slipping her hand into mine. "Grandma," she whispered, "I'm really proud of you." In that moment, with my granddaughter's hand in mine, and the future stretching before us, uncertain but full of possibility, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again. Whole. Not despite the broken places, but because of how carefully they'd been mended. My name is Martha Reynolds. I am 69 years old. I am a cancer survivor, a business owner, a mother, a grandmother, and most importantly, a woman who finally learned that the greatest act of love sometimes isn't sacrifice. It's standing firmly in your own worth and demanding others do the same. And that, perhaps, is the most valuable lesson of all.